public health challenge in South Africa, where the prevalence is the highest on the continent, with approximately 4.3 million living with the condition. Diabetes has been the leading cause of death in the country since 2019. And 1 in 9 adults has this disease. However, a large portion of the population remains undiagnosed, increasing the risk of severe complications, including foot-related issues that often lead to amputations. Poor diabetes management and limited access to healthcare contribute to rising mortality rates, and significant economic strain on families and the healthcare system. Now, to chat about this very important topic where we're talking about diabetes and foot health, we are joined on the line, and we're also joined live by Mohammed Azim Sheikh, who is a dedicated podiatrist. He is based in Rosebank at the Zone with an interest in geriatric care. A proud alumnus of the University of Johannesburg, he graduated with honours, demonstrating his commitment to excellence in healthcare. And beyond his professional achievements, Azim is a passionate advocate for community development. He is one of the founders of a non-profit organization that provides tuition to underprivileged communities, empowering individuals through education. And in his leisure time, he indulges his love for classic cars and enjoys cycling, balancing his professional life with his personal passion. Everything in balance indeed. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Muhammad Azim. Welcome to Urban Women this morning.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for having me.
Barakallah, it's an absolute pleasure. Now share with us, especially for people who have diabetes and we have family who have diabetes, why is foot care so critical for people with diabetes, especially regarding diabetic ulcers?
100%. So it's a very important and a very good question. So one of the things that a few of the things that we notice with diabetes and some of the complications is nerve damage or neuropathy. Some of the diabetic patients might know what that is. One of the other things is poor circulation and foot deformities. So with regards to neuropathy, what that is you start to lose sensation in your feet, right? So for a diabetic person, if they cut their foot or injure their foot, they might not notice it, right? So you have possibly an open wound on your foot. It can carry on for a few days and get infected, right? This is all because you haven't noticed it, you haven't felt any pain, right? So it's very important that you assess your feet daily to notice for any sorts of abnormalities. One of the other things is also poor circulation. Now, with poor circulation, this leads to delayed wound healing. So when you do have an injury, it's very important that you keep it clean and put measures in place that help the wound heal. Now, with delayed wound healing, you put yourself at risk for infections, right? Because again, you might not notice the wound or the injury. Now, when it gets infected, you put yourself at risk, or not to put yourself at risk, you have to put measures in place like antibiotics. And with poor circulation, it takes even longer for the wound to heal, right? And if the wound is in a high pressure area, meaning in the plantar or underneath the foot, possibly in the heel or where your toes are, right? This is an area that takes a lot of pressure while you're standing. So you don't want to put a lot of pressure on that area when there is a wound there. So you need to put measures in place, specific type of shoes or inner soles just to aid in the healing.
Okay, so you're talking about delayed healing, and we can understand now the complications. So what are some early signs of diabetic foot complications and ulcers that patients should watch out for?
So a few of the things that you should look out for is skin changes or color, or the discoloration of your skin, right? This could be a bruise, or maybe from the type of shoe that you're wearing, it's starting to cause friction on the skin. These are things that you need to look out for. One of the other things is swelling or edema. If you just notice a sudden onset that my ankle or my foot is starting to swell, you need to visit your healthcare professional as soon as possible. If you start noticing that you are losing sensation in your feet, right? This would also be a case where you need to visit your professional, and we'd run you through a neuro assessment to find out exactly what the issue is. Pain and cramping, but this could be, if you go for a long hike or a run, you will feel some sort of discomfort or pain afterwards. But what we're looking out for is sudden onset of pain, right?
Right.
Maybe while you're resting, or you're not walking, you're not bearing any weight on your feet, but you just have the sudden onset of pain, right? That's something that
Mhm.
you should definitely get checked out. uh, Sores, blisters, cuts, those sort of things. That's why I said it's very important that you assess your feet daily to notice for any cuts, bruises, or blisters, right? So we can get to treating it as early as possible and we don't have any complications further down the line. Corns and calluses, this a lot of people do suffer with, which is basically hard
Correct.
skin, right? But
Yep.
with this hard skin, if you leave it for prolonged periods of time, right, and
Mhm.
if you don't get it treated or removed, it can lead to ulcers further along the line. What
Okay.
else could there be? Oh, yes, one of the other things, or very important things also, is fungal infections. Now, a lot of people do suffer with athlete's feet or ingrown nails and that sort of thing. So it's very important that if you are suffering with these sort of things, or you do notice that maybe I have an ingrown nail, or my nail is slightly yellow has a yellow discoloration, right? This is
Mhm.
something that you need to get assessed and treated immediately. Uh, yeah, from my side. Oh, and of course, if you do have a wound and you notice that it, there's an odor coming from it and there's a lot of pus coming out of the wound, it's very important also as well that you get the wound assessed and treated as soon as possible.
So it's so important to be aware of your feet, of your health, of your body. It's always talking to you, as we say. How can individuals with diabetes actually prevent serious foot problems such as diabetes, ulcers, and even amputations?
100%. So, what I recommend, especially to diabetic patients, and furthermore, for patients where their sugar levels or their glucose levels are not controlled, you need to
Hmm.
have a 4 week to 6 week checkup with your podiatrist or with your GP, right? So,
Okay.
what we do, if you have to come through to your podiatrist, we do a dermatological assessment. We assess your skin to make sure that there are no abnormalities from your previous visit. If you do notice something that is out of the ordinary, we can get to start treating it as soon as possible, right? One of the other things that we do as well is a neuropathic assessment, right? So what this does is we assess the sensation in your feet, right? And now that we're doing it on a monthly basis, right? In a month that you notice where there is an abnormality, you can get to assessing it and treating it and managing it as soon as possible, right?
Hmm.
One
Hmm.
of the other things that we do notice with severe diabetes is foot deformities. Now, with these deformities, for example, you have something called claw toes or hematoes. That's when your
Okay.
toes start to like curl inwards. Now, this starts to put a lot of pressure on the top of the foot and on the apex of the toe or the front of the foot, right? These are areas that are not usually taking a lot of pressure, so the skin is quite sensitive. So you put
Hmm.
yourself at risk for blisters, sores, and open wounds, right? So as soon as you notice these sort of things, you need to get to treating it as soon as possible, right? Uh, if you are suffering with ulcers, right, as a diabetic patient, it's very important. The golden rule is managing your glucose levels, right? So high glucose levels is the cause of all the problems, right? It affects your
Mm.
nerves, it affects your blood flow, right? So as long as you can manage your sugar levels, right, it reduces the risk of these complications. Uh, if you do have any infections, get to treating it as soon as possible. And one of the other things is also educating yourself about what diabetes is and the complications to look out for, right?
Mhm.
So it just gives you that knowledge to know when you might notice something out of the ordinary. And when you do, you know exactly, all right, I need to visit my healthcare professional as soon as possible to get this treated.
So you're talking about a podiatrist, and you are one as well. For the benefit of the listeners, share with us what role does a podiatrist play in managing diabetic ulcers and preventing severe complications as well?
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll give you a bit of an example. I am currently dealing with a patient who has severe diabetes. It is uncontrolled, and he has ulcers on the bottom of his feet and on the top of his feet as well, right? So what I do is I come in and try and help the wound heal, if you will, right? So your body will play its part, but from an external point of view, it's very important that you keep the wound clean and covered, right? And if it's in a high pressure area, you need to put measures in place. So in my case, I use something called felt dressing, where I cut it to the specific shape of the wound, right? We cut out the center and I put it over the wound. So when you do put pressure on that area, right, we are not, no pressure is going onto the ulcer specifically, right? So this will aid in wound healing. One of the other things also, as soon as a diabetic patient comes in, the first thing I do is test your glucose levels, right? Or your sugar levels. And then from there, we do a biomechanical assessment to assess where your range of motion is, if your joints are affected. And then a dermatological, of course, we assess your skin to make sure that there are no abnormalities there, infections, open wounds, anything of those sorts. And then, of course, a neuropathic assessment to assess the sensation in your feet. And finally, we do a pedal pulse assessment. So you've got 3 very important pulses in your feet, right? And we try and assess those pulses to see how strong the pulses are. And one of the important things we look out for also is capillary refill time, right? So this is how quickly does blood flow come back to your feet, right? So this is already going to tell me what type of blood flow you have to your feet.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that information. We have one of the listeners that's saying, could you recommend the podiatrist here in Durban? I need one urgently, she says. But I think we can just simply Google that. Thank you so much for your time, Brother Mohammed Azim. It's been wonderful chatting with you. I'm sure the info you shared has been very beneficial. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And that was Brother Mohammed Azim Sheikh, a podiatrist all the way in Johannesburg, connecting with us and sharing some very valuable information. So if you are diabetic, do pay attention to your feet. And I hope that you take some of this very important information that he shared with us and implement them as well. Because, if you nip it in the bud, then inshallah it can save you from a lot later on. It is time for a break. You're listening to Urban Woman with me, Razia Rangrage. Stay tuned.